Daryl Webster, it's been a long time, mate. Good to have you back, and we're going to have a very good chat today about some interesting new investment areas from Microsoft. So welcome to the episode, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. It has been a little while. I think last time we were talking, it was on a Valo event.
It was indeed. That was quite some time ago now. So yeah, good to catch up again. Now, for everybody watching and listening, tell everybody, who is Daryl Webster? What do you do? And what's keeping you busy these days?
Well, I'm Daryl as a service. I scored that nickname from a friend of mine working in the IT space who said, "Look, you seem to be everywhere, doing a lot of things," and that still is the case.
It is.
I'm working for WM Reply as a change and adoption senior consultant out of New Zealand, but we're working across different places around the world as well, and working with some good clients that expose us to lots of cool things. On the community side, I'm an MVP working in the community. I did have a bit of a dip over the last year. Like many of us, we got kind of a bit lost in the whole pandemic thing, and I sort of dialed it back a bit, but I'm back now, enjoying trying to organize community events and various things online to bring people together. And one of the key things that I'm interested in is trying to prepare people for change. That's the name of my title, and it's also what I like to do on the community side of things as well.
Yeah. So obviously recently, as we all know, there's been a hell of a lot of need for change, over the last sort of 2 years. So you've probably been kept extremely busy. What are the main areas that you've seen people, I guess, needing assistance with, or people struggling with? Is it Microsoft Teams, or is it all platforms, or where have you seen the most importance?
I think what we've seen as a pattern for many organizations is they had to react and stand up remote access and working from home type scenarios. And we all rushed to technologies and made our best of it, and threw a whole lot of technology out there and guidance and stuff, and people found their way. And one of the big needs at the moment is actually coming around behind that and tidying it up. Now, on the technical side, that's governance and making sure that things are all under control, and getting rid of the things that we don't need and tuning the things that we do and making sure it's all secure. And on the people side of things, that's kind of where it's become more significant. You see some parallels with what Microsoft are investing in, where it's helping people to get back into, to actually get into good practices that support their remote work and their hybrid working. So they're not overwhelmed. So they can get work done, but they're not scattered. And, with applications like Teams and other various platforms, it's pretty easy to fall into bad habits, Daniel.
It is very, very easy indeed. So, and has it been, I guess what I've seen as well is people have been, I guess, forced into using something like Microsoft Teams, but just for the basic sort of things, so things like chat and meetings and that type of thing. There's obviously now, a lot of investment, a lot of eye-opening into how they can actually use these platforms even more now. I was talking to Mark Cashman quite some time ago now, but it's almost like that, in the initial stages of Office 365, it was move your email in there, and then that's sort of the entry point where, over this period of time, it's almost been Microsoft Teams has been the entry point, and then everything else. So as you said before, it's now playing sort of catch up and also going round in circles now, and to think, well, how can we now use the platform to be more productive and to work better as well?
Yeah, there's a wider concern too, in outside of just the technology, which I'm glad to see has been recognized by Microsoft in the areas that they're focusing. And people are overwhelmed. They are out of balance with how they're working versus life and how many hours they're working. They do struggle with maintaining focus because they're staring at flat screens with grids of people all day, or they've got hundreds of windows open. And so what they're trying to do is shape this technology around to try and lower that stress, make it easier for things to be found, to tear down a few boundaries and make collaboration a lot easier.
Yeah. Now, recently, at the time of this that we're recording this, Ignite has wrapped up a number of weeks ago, and obviously with these type of big conferences, there's a lot of fanfare about and anticipation around things that are going to be announced and that type of thing. And this year, I guess, was no exception. And we did get introduced to a new app called Microsoft Loop. And the reason, or one of the reasons for bringing you on is that you've been probably going head first into Microsoft Loop more than most, and you've got a really good understanding. You're putting out a stack of content around Loop and what it is and that type of thing. So, I'll put you under a little bit of pressure. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, elevator pitch. What is Microsoft Loop?
Daniel, you see, you put that question back on me, and I was going to have a bit of fun with that. I actually want to see what you would have to say about it first, because as I have conversations with people and I say, look, what would you say Microsoft Loop is? It's a this or it's a that, and it does this and that and this and that and this and that. And I'm like, well, okay, but what is it? What would you say?
Well, I would say it's a place where we can bring everything into a single place, where groups of people can plan and think and create, individual artifacts. So let's say we're working on a project. We can bring in the documents and work collaboratively on a canvas, on a page, and bring all of that into the one place, and we can stay aligned to everything.
The elevator has reached the floor. It's difficult, isn't it?
Right? It is very,
especially when it's something that takes together so many different things and tries to cover so many bases. And I know we're going to talk about this a bit later. What does this mean in terms of Loop versus Teams or Loop versus something else? But you're on the money with the creative and coming up with ideas part of the cycle, right? So what happens when we try and, I don't know, you and I maybe we're on a call and we're with a couple of others and let's get something open so we can start taking some notes. Your OneNote or mine, your site or mine, your team or mine. Which app, when, what, do we have permission? 5 minutes later, you've actually got access. So elevator pitch that yes, it is an app and it's a place to bring content together, to simply share, to collaborate with groups of people and to keep everything in sync at the same time. Now, it doesn't sound too different to other applications, right? Because our understanding is quite early in the piece. We've seen marketing videos with all sorts of colors and floaty things going around the screen and poking at stuff. But its real key strengths are that it is about curating and bringing that content together and people and collaborating in that flexible canvas, that boundaryless way of collaboration, where it doesn't matter where that content lives. You're just sticking a link on a page and you're having a, paragraph or a discussion around it, or getting tasks together and just working things out in terms of the content or the ideas or the project.
And so what makes up Microsoft Loop? There's obviously, well, I'll call them modules. They've probably got a different name, but there's different components to a Loop. Well, components, yes, true. Maybe I'll rethink that word.
No, there's that interesting though, isn't
parts.
It? Think about it. Like we've already had the Teams team. So now when we're talking about the components of Loop, components, that's already been taken as a word. As a
big C, little c?
Yeah, that's right.
T?
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think this actually leans into the way that it is currently being rolled out, which I think is quite clever. The product itself is supporting the way that it rolls out. So they're starting with components. Components are what we used to know in previously announced names as live components or fluid components.
Yeah.
And the idea here is that you can start up a component in an application. You can start to add content to it and share it with people. And that same component can be shared around to other locations, other Loop-aware applications and platforms. So that's components. Wider than that is a Loop page, also known as a fluid document. And they're actually available today, because as soon as you create a Loop component in a Teams chat, for example, there it is. It's sitting there in your Microsoft Teams files folder in your OneDrive. So pages are there today. But what's going to come in, I think it's the first half of 2022, is the Microsoft Loop application, whether it be desktop. We don't know about online browser versions or mobile versions, but that's going to be the mechanism for bringing all of these pages and content together into workspaces. We can manage our workspaces, share them with people, and we hope that we'll see that nice tie between a team and a workspace, or a channel and a workspace.
That will be interesting. Now, this concept of, I guess, of portability around components. So I can create a live component in Teams, but that can then be shared with other applications that are, do we say, Loop aware, or
yeah, that's the one.
That type of thing. So it could live in an email, or it could live in a Teams chat, or it could live in some potentially Yammer and things like that, maybe. And then that is all live and synchronous, right? So I can be updating a task list or an agenda or anything like that in Teams, but then that same component could be in an email that I've sent you, and then you could be updating that. That's the concept of those live components, right?
Yeah, definitely. When it's Loop aware, it's as if it's embedded. And that's something else to say about components, is they're really, really lightweight. Like the strength of it is that they are so quick with synchronization that they literally feel like real time. And so if you think about, what sort of impact delays and synchronization can cause. I mean, I know I've collaborated on OneNotes with people, and sometimes it's so frustrating. There it is. It appeared there. Good. Okay, great. But take those components. You copy a link from that component, and you paste that link into a Loop aware application, and it will feel like it's embedded, and you're seeing that same window through to that same content being updated live.
So where do you think this application sits in terms of the people that are going to get the most benefit out of this? So there's certain, is it a creative group? Is it a project group? Is it a finance department? Where do you think that the benefit, who's going to see the most benefit from this?
I know that it is being positioned at the creation and collection sort of end of the spectrum. Think about like that whole life cycle of creating something. It's about bringing ideas together and dropping things on a whiteboard and getting input, and it's all very sort of up in the air. And then as something gets a bit more refined, you're getting more input from people, but you're starting to dial down maybe the number of people that are contributing to it. And as you get closer to needing to publish something, you're maybe starting to take that content and putting it into something more substantial, like a Word document or a PowerPoint or something like that too. And of course, the life cycle of that, it's in SharePoint or something, and you go into all that sort of archive and retention. Where does it fit? Really quite squarely, I think, is it's weighted at the creation and collection phase. So that if you and I are starting on a project, that we create this canvas and say, okay, let's get started. Let's pull together all the resources and things we need to know about this particular topic for our project, and we'll put them there. And let's just throw a couple of paragraphs around it so that we know what this is for and why. Okay, well, as we're talking, let's add some tasks, /type task. Oh, yeah, I'll take the task list, thanks. Up comes that table, and, we can put a task, we can assign it to Daniel, and we can give it a due date. And so it's really rapid. And that's why sometimes you can look at it and think, wow, I'm kind of underwhelmed. It's just like a fancy text pad, or, maybe it's like markup language. I can type something and there it is. But that's the beauty of it, is it is lightweight. It helps you just get into doing things. And interesting thing that later on we hear that the things like the task lists, or what was it, follow-up tasks table, one of the new ones that's coming out, status tracker, apparently is going to be able to synchronize with Planner and To Do. So that's the vision. Yeah. Start somewhere where it's really lightweight when you're generating these ideas, and gradually bring it into that more substantial tool.
So, and I've already been asked this question, or it's been raised a number of times around, how does this compare to Microsoft Teams? I mean, yes, you can bring a group of people together in a team. We've got all of these resources. We can pull all of this in. How do you see that sort of playing out? I mean, Microsoft, we've seen this before, with Yammer versus Teams versus this versus that, and this could potentially have a similar path, I guess.
Yeah, I think people do tend to lean towards the versus aspect of whenever they're measuring up new tools. Oh, there's overlap. Oh, we can already do this, so I'm just going to stick with what I know already. And that leans into adoption and change management and the way that people work. They prefer to stick to what they already know and maybe just venture out and try a few things. And, that's why they will go to versus and then either look for reasons why or why not to start shifting that behavior over. With this tool, and I think with a lot of the tools within Microsoft 365, actually, let's talk about them first. Really, there's still things are quite siloed. We have the office.com page that presents us with recently worked on content. So that's cool. That's improving too. Search is good there. We can find the most recently accessed and searched upon or people that we've connected with in various different places throughout the Microsoft 365 products. We know that content is stored in SharePoint and OneDrive in the background. And we've got a layer with Teams over the top that provides that communication, ways of channeling that so that it's all kept nicely together and bringing apps and attaching tabs and all that sort of thing. That's still a great teamwork environment. But things still tend to be siloed a bit, even within a team. Which channel am I supposed to put this in? Where's that document? Oh, it's 4 layers down. Did you pin that as a tab? No, I didn't really think to do that. Okay, well, I'll show you where to get it. Let me copy the link. Let's find that conversation where that conversation actually talked about that document, that task, and that project. So search. Okay, we found it after a few minutes. It's not a versus. I think it's another and scenario. And we haven't seen that connection yet. It hasn't really been confirmed. But think of the canvas and one of my analogies is that it's like a big table with smorgasbord. And Teams, I guess, is like the dinner tray with the separation. Okay, it's not siloed really, but everything's separated into peas over here, meat over there, carrots over there. You know what I mean? Whereas your canvas kind of style is it's all open. It's all there. You just stick it wherever you want it. It's all been brought together. And if you want to do a deep dive, double click into that thing. And now you're into the whiteboard. Now you're into that document. So it doesn't matter where that content lives, truly. Whereas maybe in Teams, it does still matter. And I think the Canvas way of working with Microsoft Loop is going to follow a pattern where in the ideation phase, you don't want those boundaries. You don't want to be stalled by where do I find this thing and do you have permission? But let's work with where it is right now and then shift into something more hefty later.
That's where I think the really big uptake is going to be around the ease of use. I mean, it is very intuitive. People will actually just natively be able to start using it, whereas Teams is still amazing. Don't get me wrong, amazing product, but still people struggle a little bit with how to use it the best way and that type of thing. And I think the gap that Loop is going to fit or fill there is going to be that initial, as you mentioned before, that initial ideation creation stage where it's just quick and easy and fast, and you can come together really, really quickly. And I was playing around with it the other day, just putting an agenda together for a one-to-one meeting, and how quickly it was for me just to be able to grab an agenda, /agenda, add that there, and it's just there ready to go. So there's going to be a lot of upside, and I think the adoption of this is going to be pretty quick. I did hear somewhere that it might be anticipated that it could potentially overtake the usage of Teams. I'm not sure if you've heard anything around that. But
it's hard to say from the marketing videos, right? Like, the designers that created those, they call them movies. I was reading like a background article on Medium about that. It's really interesting to hear them talk about how much time they put into putting these things together.
They are very good at the marketing and everything like that. As we know.
But I want to say something about that too, like massive effort, and I wouldn't say write it off in terms of, oh, this is all conceptual, because what I did do was spend a bit of time slowing down and saying, well, what are the hints that are towards what we're going to see, and how is this actually going to play out? And so let me talk about another angle on this. Some people are definitely comparing it to other products existing in the market, and one which I heard about, never really looked at, and then when it was compared to Loop, I thought, I'm going to take a look at this. That's Notion. And it's a fantastic app. When I started using it, I was like, wow, okay. It really keeps everything together, and I can create pages within pages, and it feels like it's my own wiki, but I can work with others as well. And, you know, I can make all these different references. It's like OneNote and how it should have been, you know, like OneNote's really been kind of neglected in that space. And so that comparison was made. But then when we pair that up with what we're seeing in how Loop is going to be connected to other Microsoft 365 services, and that's where the head explodes, because, you know, being able to share the content around with those components and getting people to contribute, cool. But when we can, like the floating cursors thing, this is, I mean, it's a hint and they haven't really talked much about it, but one of the common things around Canvas type apps, much like Whiteboard, is that you actually can motion towards, this is what we're going to talk about. Hey, everyone, come to me. Click a button. Whoop, we're all seeing the same thing now. And without too much effort, I'm guiding you through some of the thoughts and things that we've been thinking about. Okay, now you take over. So you do that. And hey, let's double click now into that whiteboard, and we'll all follow each other into that whiteboard and start to work on it. How does it connect with Teams and calls? Well, I believe that, you know, it'll be about that connection with actually using a Teams call, much like when you can add a whiteboard as a tab to a Teams meeting. It'll be a Loop page or a Loop workspace. But we're making a lot of assumptions here. I just think it's early to say what that looks like, and I just trying to, I guess, allay some concerns that it's going to be a versus situation.
Yeah, I definitely see it being an and as well, for sure. I don't think one's use this instead of that. I think the combination of that, and we're seeing that a lot as well, I guess, with Viva and that side of things. You know, bringing in SharePoint, and then bringing in other components or other areas of the platform as well. Or Yammer, as an example, you know, using Yammer inside of that too. So it is that where the early conversations were always a versus, do I use this or do I use that? But they are intuitively, starting to become really better together, as they say as well.
That's a good way to describe it, because for a long time we've heard about this big vision where, wouldn't it be great if one day when we use Microsoft 365, it doesn't matter what we're using and when, that won't even be an argument or a discussion. We'll just use something.
Use it. Yeah.
Yep. And it'll be there.
Yeah. Because a lot of times you've probably seen this as well around, especially around the Yammer conversation, where you want to have that conversational thing inside of a SharePoint intranet, let's say, but you want to try and use Yammer, and you want to try and hide it so people don't know you're using Yammer, but you're using Yammer, that type of thing.
Like the palm olive soap.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you're soaking it already.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what from your work, I guess, and research into using Loop, what can we actually do today? What's available today? Where do we go and find it and start playing with it?
it's best described as something of a journey. Like we mentioned about it earlier, that there are components, there are pages, and there are workspaces. And today what we're seeing are the components. And the first loop-aware experience of that is within a Microsoft Teams chat. That's a one-on-one chat, a group chat, and also I found chats within a Teams meeting. Because, a private Teams meeting. Got to distinguish between that. Private Teams meetings, your chat is a bit like a private private chat. So that's where you'll find there's an icon there which is going to change. It looks currently like the live components icon. They'll be changing that to the loop button. Now, what does that give us today? There are, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 different components that are available to us today. That some you can choose from adding to a Teams conversation, and they're there as a menu. But once you're in there, you can use the / and add a few more as well. And today, that's allowing us to have a very quick start, to create an agenda, to write a paragraph, to build a table of information, track some tasks, insert pictures, put a date in, mention someone, all these sorts of things that we might want to do on a canvas to bring content together. But one thing that that's going to expand there, and they've talked about this, is adding more components. And if we compare it to those other products that it is being compared to, they've got hundreds of things that you can add into a page to be able to quickly make a start on something and bring information together and order it and taskify it or whatever. So expect to see a list of loop components increase. So today it is available and rolling out. I know that some people have it today in standard release. Others are still waiting. I think it's one of those experiences as technology rolls out in Microsoft 365 where sometimes it's at the service level and everyone gets it at the same time. Sometimes it's down to are you in the right group and will you see it? Maybe you'll see it in that next update. And then it's very much down to individual levels, it would seem, in this one, where people in their own organization some might have it, some might not.
So inside of Teams, that's generally available and rolling out, not in public preview?
It's rolling out. You could jump on the public preview, and I still recommend doing that within an organization to get a feel for what things are landing in Teams so you can prepare your people. Good one to give to your group of champions that might be helping you out with using Teams and representing that way of working. But it is generally available in that space, and being able to add loops to chats, add components, expand on that. Don't know if you tried this, Daniel, before too, but once you have added that loop, I'd step through this process with me in my mind. You're adding it to a chat. You choose the starting point, whether it be a paragraph or a table or a list or something, and you got to give it a name because in the background it's a fluid file. So it saves to your OneDrive, and then you can also choose permissions on the loop as well. And you're like, well, why would I do that? I mean, the people in the chat are the people I want to collaborate with. The permissions allows you to control how that copy link will work and how it is shared. So it'll be shared with you and I and whoever else is in the chat. But do I want them to be able to then share it onto others and have no issues with getting other people to contribute? So that's an interesting space, and it created some content around that because, you think about governance and who gets access to what and how widely do we want to control that. But that's then what leads into, I guess, the next experiences that we think we'll be seeing, which is it'll turn up in other loop-aware experiences, like creating a meeting invite. Yeah. And that one looks really beautiful, actually. What did you think of that when you saw it?
Yeah, I thought that was for me one of the more exciting ones. And I guess the experience with that sharing thing, I guess the good thing about that sharing control is that people can be part of that chat or not be part of that chat, but also contribute to that component, which I think on the flip side of that sort of security governance type of thing, I think that can be very, very powerful too.
Yeah.
But that meeting experience does look extremely interesting.
Yeah. Well, as you're creating that invite, it's going to guide people towards some good practice, because first thing you'll see is, hey, here's an agenda you can share with others. Why don't you fill that out? Good idea. What about the space down here for meeting notes? Okay, yeah, well, I could put a few things there early, so that's fine. And then following that, some follow-up tasks. So everything will stick with that meeting invite and that life cycle right through to let's start the meeting. Okay, oh, there it is. It's right there on the side. I can open that up and we can actually tick off the agenda items as people are filling that out and speaking about those things. We can start taking notes together, so that's cool. We've done that in other products, but it's truly real time. And then you can set yourself some follow-up tasks. Okay, so what are the action points at the end of this? When the meeting finishes, it's sitting there with all the other meeting assets, your recording, your transcript. But really valuable is you don't have to go searching for it. Still attached to the meeting. Here's what we talked about. Here's a few notes that we took together, and here's the follow-up actions that people said they were going to do. Beautiful.
Perfect. Yeah, amazing. What about, have you seen anything or had an experience around the external part of this?
That's the fair question. And I think it actually depends also on what people can access of Loop today. First question really for an organization when they're thinking about collaborating with external guests or people in their meetings or external facing teams, that, do you have external sharing turned on? Is it enabled within your SharePoint environments? And are you able to share these things with guests? And some, they see the value in having that anonymous link that share with anyone. You can still have some control over that. We don't know what that looks like at this stage. I know in the environments that I've been working in, we tend to turn that off. But what I have heard and seen is some people have tried this out. They have invited a guest in. The guest doesn't have a OneDrive, do they? So they can't create loops.
Yep.
But they're expected to be able to participate in them. And so they might not see necessarily the embedded loop aware experience in Teams, but they could click that button and it could open up in the office.com page to see that full loop page. Again, I've got to do some testing around this as well, but that's what I'm starting to hear from people that are trying a few things.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you, from my understanding and talking to you before we hit the record button, you're doing some, and you're putting some information and some content and a lot of learning material around Microsoft Loop in a course. You tell us a little bit about what you're doing in that space.
Well, it goes back to my roots and how I got involved in the community. And like many of us, we like to share what we're discovering and expose that process. And I think that's part of the fun of discovering things and sharing them, is that you're inviting people to be part of that journey and learn along with you. And so that's what I'm trying to do is as Loop is being slowly rolled out as components, as Loop aware experiences, as pages, and then the full app eventually, it feels right to be able to go through that experience and create some content. And rather than it just being a bunch of blog posts and some videos, how about I try and create this in a way that can be reused, can keep people up to date with things as they're being released, and eventually it become a good resource that could be pointed to for training people and for user adoption and change management. Yeah. So yeah, I'm using the Teachable platform. Have you come across that before?
I have. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty clever platform. I was using it, or still am, to try and package up communications campaigns, done for you resources for creating awareness for change. But going back to that training core use of it, that's where I'm using it at Modern Workplace Change .teachable.com, I think it is. So and it's It's good. It's actually a really good platform. What I'm trying to do is make it free as well at this stage, because we're all learning about it, and things need to be brushed up and turned on. And it'd be a bit pretentious to say, I've got a 5-hour course on Loop, and I'm going to take you through every single thing, and you're going to be an expert on something that hasn't even come out yet properly. No, it's better to expose this journey, have a bit of fun with people as we do it, talk about it, learn, figure out how we're going to talk about this to our people, and help them realize the benefits of it.
Yeah. Amazing. Sounds great. I'll link to all of that, obviously, in the show notes. Awesome. And everything like that as well. Mate, let's wrap things up there. I could talk to you forever about change and adoption and all that sort of stuff, but we'll get you back on at some point as well to talk more about that. But really interested to see where Loop goes. And I know you're doing a lot of work in there. I said there's going to be huge potential here with this in particular. So thanks for sharing all your insights, knowledge, everything like that. And for everybody, again, watching, listening, Daryl and I'll put all this in the show notes, Daryl puts out a hell of a lot of content, free, obviously, at this point in time. But no, it does share a hell of a lot of stuff. You could just learn a lot from him just by following him on socials and everything like that. So, Daryl, really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me.